The question is the bill be now read the second time, and I call the Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. It's my pleasure to stand up on behalf of the Minister for Industry and to provide the summing up on this bill and to speak in favour of the Textile, Clothing and Footwear Investment and Innovation Programs Amendment Bill 2014, which amends the Textile, Clothing and Footwear Investment and Innovation Programs Act 1999 to close both the TCF Small Business Program, known as TCF SBP, and the Clothing and Household Textiles Building Innovative Capability Scheme, known as the BIC scheme, on the 30th of June 2014, which will deliver savings to the budget of $25 million in 2015-2016. Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, I must congratulate my colleagues, the member for Tangi, the member for Swan and the member for Hughes for their enlightened contributions to this debate. But I also must point out that some of those members opposite made some mistakes in their speeches to this House on this bill. For example, the member for Indi said that businesses who undertake activities under the BIC scheme will not be reimbursed for their activities in 2013-14. That is not correct. They will get some reimbursement for those activities. The member for Melbourne said that the BIC scheme was for small business. He is wrong. The BIC scheme is for big business, and there is the SBP scheme, which is actually for small business. But Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, I think the point that we need to reinforce in this place is that these original programs were put in place to ensure a transition to a lower tariff regime. And since 2001-2002, the Commonwealth in grants has provided over $1.2 billion in taxpayers' money for the TCF industry, a very considerable sum of money over an extended period of time. But now is the time to take the hard decisions to repay Labor's debt and to bring the budget back into balance. And those opposite can put their heads in the sand and pretend we don't have to take any tough decisions. But you know what? Every independent authority is telling this government that you have to take tough decisions to repay back Labor's debt and to wind back some of the spending commitments that our political predecessors gave us. The International Monetary Fund has told us of 17 advanced economies in the world, Australia has the fastest rate of spending. The Independent Parliamentary Budget Office has said that we have massive spending commitments that also need to be pulled back. And then you had the Commission of Audit, which said that business as usual is not an option. This is a result of the $667 billion debt legacy that you bequeathed the Abbott coalition government. That's an imaginary figure, is it? $667 billion.
Point of order.
Speaker, I would ask that the member speak through the chair and not accuse you of things I'm sure you've not done.
Thank the member.
I noticed that the acting deputy speaker is a member of our political opponents, and our political opponents, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, are responsible for leaving a massive debt legacy which we have to repay. And in the most recent budget, of which the measures in this bill form part, we are making an effort to pay back some of that debt, and nearly $300 billion will be paid back over the next 10 years, reducing the interest bill for the Australian people by around $16 billion a year. That is an extremely significant inroad into the mountain of debt that we were left. If you want to make spending commitments of Gonski or the National Disability Insurance Scheme or put in place new major road projects, you need to remove some of this debt burden. You need to pay back some of the interest bill on that debt, which currently stands, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, at $1 billion every month. So we have had to take the tough decisions, and we're prepared to wear some criticisms for those, because we know it is in the long-term interests of the Australian people. Now, we do want to increase the competitiveness of our industry, of our manufacturing industry in this country, because it's an important sector. In fact, the member for Bendigo gets up and speaks in opposition to this bill. Well, she knows about the Bushmaster vehicles, which have been a great product out of her own electorate, and that's because they are innovative, and that is because they are seeking export markets, particularly in Asia, and that is because we as a government are trying to create an environment which is conducive to that form of business. So we are going to reduce the overall tax burden by removing the carbon tax and by removing the mining tax and by cutting company tax. We're cutting $1 billion a year in red and green tape right across the economy to help make our manufacturing industry more profitable and more competitive. And we are looking for opportunities to reach free trade agreements with our major trading partners, so to open new export markets for our businesses. That, Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker, is how we go about creating the millions of new jobs that we want to do. And we have a perfect role model for our approach to improving the economy. And that was the legacy of the Howard Costello years, which gave us more than 2 million new jobs, which gave our country an increase of more than 20% in real wages, and which of course brought unemployment and inflation down to the lowest level in decades. That was the record of the last coalition government, and now the Abbott coalition government, and the hard work of our Treasurer, the member for North Sydney. We will go about this job of paying back Labor's debt. So we have taken the tough decisions, and one of the tough decisions is in the bill before us, but it will give us that $25 million saving, which is so important to paying back Labor's debt. And I also want to point out to the House that we are closing some of these TCF programs, but we are also putting in place a $484 million new entrepreneurs infrastructure program, which will be conducted through a single business service. So we are reinvesting in entrepreneurship in this country. We are cutting red tape. We are reducing the overall tax burden. We are trying to create a more efficient and effective industrial relations climate. And by doing that, we will create hundreds of thousands and, in time, millions of new jobs. And I want to remind the House, Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker, that the Australian taxpayer since 2001-2 has provided over $1.2 billion of its precious capital for supporting the TCF industry. This bill removes some programs which were put in place to transition to a lower tariff environment. That job has been done. Now we are trying to find savings to deal with the massive debt and deficit legacy that was bequeathed to us by our political opponents. I commend this bill to the House.